The Trident ran red beneath a cold spring sun, its currents swollen with melted snows and men's blood alike. Rhaegar Targaryen knelt in the shallows, gauntlets sunk in silt, while water whispered round his plated arms and tugged at the torn scarlet cloak drifting from his shoulders. Rubies the color of heartfire lay strewn across the riverbed, glinting between pebbles. He looked down at them, scattered tokens of a death that had not claimed him, and felt the dull incredulity of one shaken awake from prophecy. Robert's warhammer had shattered the enamel on his breastplate, split steel and flesh, yet somehow the killing blow had glanced. A swirl of river mud, the press of desperate shields, and the stad's fury had been swept aside for a heartbeat long enough for loyal swords to drag the prince free. Now as shouts receded across the far bank, Rhaegar tasted copper, rain, and the sharp metal tang of destiny deferred. A spray of muddy hoofbeats announced Sir Jonathor Darry's return. The knight's helm was dented as though crumpled by a titan's fist, and one eye bled through the visor slits, but his voice remained steady. "The host is breaking, your grace. Stormlanders hunt what's left of ours. We must quit the field." Rhaegar pushed to his feet, breath catching at the stab under broken ribs. Beyond Darry, Sir Arthur Dayne still held the line. Sword of the morning, blade pale as dawnlight, cutting a space for the prince's retreat. The riverbank smoked with trampled reeds and the stink of churned viscera. Somewhere in that ruin Robert Baratheon bellowed his victory to gods and men. His cry rolled over the water like thunder, shaking the last banners from their poles. Rhaegar touched the dented scales at his chest, where the hammer had struck the dragon's sigil, and felt them tremble as though the creature beneath still lived. Aerys would brand this day simple treason, yet prophecy spoke to Rhaegar in every fluttering heartbeat. The dragon has 3 heads, the promised song must be born, fire must meet ice. None of it could breathe beneath the smother of his father's madness. He turned from the battlefield with a rasping order. "Fall back to the ferry landing. Gather those who remain. The realm is not lost while I draw breath." By dusk, less than 1,000 battered men rode with him, a ragged column threading damp meadows toward the King's Road. The air smelled of rain-soaked soil and crushed meadow rue. Those who could still sing hummed a low dirge to steady their mounts. Others stared hollow-eyed at the prince they had thought invincible. Rhaegar felt every gaze as a weight upon his torn armor. The moon broke free of clouds, silvering his face guard, and somewhere an owl called, a lonely sound, foretelling winter. In camp that night, he lay sleepless on a cloak of sodden wool. Aching bones nestled beside the banked glow of a small fire. Dreams slid across his mind, Lyanna's laughter echoing in the godswood of Winterfell. Infant Aegon cooing as Elia pressed the babe into his arms, and beneath it all the roar of wildfire, suffocating in green, blooming beneath kings, landing like a doom yet to come. He woke before dawn. Mist clung to the horse lines and hid the wounded who moaned softly in the reeds. Sir Arthur crouched nearby, greaves spattered with river clay. "I sent riders to Harrenhal," Dane murmured. "If Lord Holster remains loyal, he may give us shelter." Rhaegar nodded, remembering the white towers and melancholic lakes, where once he had crowned a northern maid with blue winter roses. That tourney felt centuries distant, yet Harrenhal stood between him and the capital. And in the capital sat Aerys, trembling hands cupped around a pyromancer's jar, whispering of traitors in every shadow. Rhaegar heard rumors even on the wind, that his father spoke daily of burning the city rather than letting Robert claim it. That Jaime Lannister marked the king with wary lion eyes, that the small folk prayed for any dragon to slay the one on the throne. They rode through valleys smelling of plum blossom and ash, half-torched fields where farmers knelt to salvage burnt roots. Each village greeted the prince's banner with wonder, anger, or fear. Some spat at the royal standard, some cheered, most merely watched with the dull resignation of those who had buried too many sons to care which High Lord still played their Game of Thrones. Rhaegar ordered what bread remained be purchased, not seized, and left silver enough that the column's passing felt almost like mercy. But coins could not mend smashed hedgerows, or the memory of mailed fists beating on cottage doors. On the 5th night, Harrenhal's black towers reared against a sunset, the color of old wounds. The vast courtyard lay strangely silent, torches guttering along basalt walls cracked by dragonfire centuries gone. Lord Went's garrison lined the parapets, but their banners, house colors faded beneath a strip of black mourning silk, suggested grief deeper than mere defeat. Rhaegar dismounted beneath the giant gaping arch, where Balerian's fire had once punched through stone like rotted parchment. Inside, the great hall seemed cavernous and cold, tapestries gone, benches empty save for a single figure seated upon the dais. Lady Shella went, her morning gown a pool of shadow at her feet. She rose, curtsied low. "My prince. My brother Oswell rides with you, I trust." Her voice quavered like dry reeds. Rhaegar glanced toward Jonathan. The knight bowed his head, silent. Oswell lay somewhere beneath the Trident's dark waters, armor filling with silt. The lady's shoulders flinched at the unspoken answer, but she straightened. "Then Harrenhal is yours to command. We have stores enough for a fortnight. After that," she gestured helplessly, "the riverlands are bled white." That night Rhaegar walked the God's Wood alone. Moonlight spilled through shattered walls, silvering the heart tree's weeping eyes. Memories rustled among the reeds, Lyanna dancing barefoot across fallen petals, her laughter stirring a strange bright ache in him still. He knelt beneath the pale-barked sentinel, sword laid before him, and spoke to nameless northern gods. "I sought to kindle the dawn," he whispered, "but all I have brought is storm. Teach me the path that spares the realm from fire." The wind answered with the sigh of distant torches and the creak of armor plates. Sir Arthur waited at the edge of the clearing. "Ravens came," Dane said. "Lord Tywin marches from the west. The lions fly half a day behind us." Rhaegar looked skyward. Clouds drifted, heavy with unshed rain. Tywin's intentions could be mercy or doom. The Lord of Casterly Rock had once been Hand. He might bend the knee if his daughter's children remained heirs to the dragon line. Yet whispers said Tywin bore wildfire scars not on flesh but pride, each blister reminding him of a mad king's spite. Whatever moved Tywin now, it trod a path paved with calculation, not love of crown. Rhaegar summoned his captains at dawn. Their council met around a cracked stone table, where embers smoldered under a rusted brazier. A squire inked the Southron road on parchment while rain drummed the roof. "We ride for King's Landing," the prince declared. "Not to defend the throne, but to save the city from the throne's occupant." Gasps answered him. Fear, relief, disbelief mingled. Sir Miles Mouton spat a curse at the notion of kinslaying, yet even his eyes held a bleak acceptance. They all knew Eris's latest decree. Any man who spoke of surrender would burn. The pyromancers had been ordered to place casks of wildfire in septs, granaries, beneath the very streets. If Robert breached the walls, half the capital might become a green inferno. The ride south felt like slipping through twilight between two storms. Rhaegar's small host skirted the King's Road, following shepherds' tracks over rolling hills veiled in violet dusk. Spring's first gnats danced under dripping willows. Each halt grew quieter as wounded men succumbed to fever and exhaustion, leaving horses grazing beside unmarked mounds. Yet with each league Rhaegar's resolve gained sinew. He could not restore every life spent for his folly at the Trident. He could yet spare hundreds of thousands who slept beneath the tiled roofs of King's Landing, unaware that wildfire pooled beneath their feet. 3 leagues north of the Blackwater, they met small folk fleeing the capital in ox carts piled with children and tattered featherbeds. A graybeard clutching his granddaughter's hand told of alchemists moving barrels by moonlight. "Green demons in the dark," he muttered, eyes stark. "The king says the city will shine brighter than the sun when the usurper comes." His words froze the air around the prince, colder than river ice. Rhaegar pressed a dragon-headed clasp into the man's palm and urged his horse onward. Near twilight the scarlet roof tiles of the city glimmered against the bay, but no bells rang to herald the heir's return. Smoke drifted lazy spirals from the Kingspire, too much for simple hearth fires. Rhaegar led his guard along Fisherfolk Street, narrow, twisting, damp with nets and fish guts. The stench of harbor rot mingled with fear. The city gates had been barred, his white cloaks cut ropes and raised portcullis iron with groaning protests, their armor cloaked by mud-stained surcoats lest gold cloaks mistake them for enemies. No herald shouted his name. It was as though King's Landing had forgotten its prince in the space of a single blood-soaked fortnight. They stabled the horses behind the dragon pit's cracked dome and entered the city afoot. Whispers ran like rats along alleyways, slipping ahead of them toward the Red Keep. Every smith's forge was quiet. Every tavern drank only silence. Even Flea Bottom stirred with hushed suspicion rather than its usual riotous clamor. Rhaegar felt the hush as a living thing, an animal crouched before a storm. Somewhere above the rooftops, the Red Keep's lanterns glowed sickly green, reflecting off rain-slicked tiles like worm eyes. The prince approached the mud gate where gold cloaks milled uneasy. Most stared at the river, as though awaiting some sign of deliverance in the dark swells. Sir Arthur's hood shadowed his face as he murmured orders. The watch captain, recognizing the King's Guard's sigil, saluted but did not smile. "His Majesty entertains the pyromancers in the throne room," the captain said, voice hoarse. "The Queen and Prince Viserys have been shut away these 3 days, and my men, they smell fire beneath their boots." His hand trembled on the haft of his spear. Rhaegar thanked him and pressed onwards, heart hammering as though still under Robert's warhammer. Marble steps wound upward, lit by flickering sconces. Each echo in the vestibule seemed louder than the last, a hollow drumbeat calling fate to its seat. In the antechamber outside the throne room, Lord Varys appeared like a ghost in lavender silk. "At last, my Silver Prince returns." His smile held sorrow and something unreadable. "If I may be so bold, His Majesty's mood is volatile. One wrong breath might ignite the place." "Then breathe softly," Rhaegar said, brushing past. He entered alone. The great bronze doors groaned shut behind him. Sealing the hush, the hall smelled of smoke and sour fear. Torches sputtered along the high walls where tapestries once hung. Now only scorched outlines remained where fire had licked. At the far end of a carpet bleached threadbare by desperate knees, the Iron Throne loomed. Ragged, twisted, dripping shadow. Upon it crouched Aerys II Targaryen, robes stained, fingernails black claws clenching a gilded armrest. Green glass jars lined the dais, glimmering with the restless swirl of wildfire. As Rhaegar advanced, his boot heels echoed like hammer strikes. The king's matted beard twitched. Light flickered in eyes bright as fever. "Traitor, come home," Aerys rasped, licking cracked lips. "Did you bend the knee to the stag?" "I come as your son," Rhaegar answered, forcing each word steady. "Your heir. Sons betray. Fathers burn them. There is only the dragon." Aerys lifted a jar, cradling it like an infant. Inside, green light pulsed. "Slow, hungry, I will birth a new world in flame. The heat shall burn treason from their bones." He giggled, a sound like steel scraping steel. "Do you hear them? The fire talks to me." Rhaegar took another step and felt chains of grief tighten. Once, this broken wretch had crooned lullabies beside a cradle where Rhaegar gurgled at the shimmer of torchlight on a father's crown. Once, Aerys had walked gardens with Queen Rhaella's hand in his, charming ladies with tales of old Valyria. Madness had eaten him piece by piece until only the shell remained, rattling with wildfire. Yet pity could not still the drums of war. Outside these walls, Tywin's lions marched. Robert's storm raged. Lannister and Baratheon alike would hang every Targaryen child if the city burned. The realm balanced upon the edge of one man's madness. Rhaegar drew no blade. Words were steel enough, or so he prayed. "Father, listen. Robert's host swells behind us. If we show mercy now, the realm may bend, not break. Spare the city and I will broker peace." "Mercy?" Aerys' shriek ricocheted through the vaults. "Traitors deserve none. Burn them all. Burn you if you beg for mercy." He snatched a dagger from a sleeve and slashed at the air, nicking his own palm. Blood spattered jewels in his beard. He pressed bleeding fingertips to the jar's lid, smearing red across green glass. "Fire cleanses. That is mercy." Steps. Stuffed stone behind. Jaime Lannister stepped from a side alcove. Golden hair dulled by torch smoke. White cloak torn and spattered. His eyes met the prince's with a silent pleading Rhaegar had not expected. In that moment, the heir saw how far madness had carried them all. The lion cub sworn to guard, longing to strike. The prince sworn to obey, longing to save. The king shuddering in his tower of melted swords, longing only for flame. Rhaegar's next words felt heavy as mountains. "Father, I cannot let you destroy our people." His voice barely rose above a whisper, yet it filled the throne room with a quiet as absolute as the hush before lightning breaks. The jars shimmered. Shadows trembled. Aerys hissed, clutching the dagger tighter. "Another usurper." He lurched up, robes twisting. "I am the king, obey me." The moment stretched, taut as a drawn bowstring. Jaime's hand moved toward his sword hilt. The torches guttered, and something inside Rhaegar, some final chain of filial devotion, snapped with the brittle clarity of crystal under stress too long applied. He felt not rage, but an aching sorrow, a love turned to ash by necessity. Prophecy's song beat behind his ribs like wings yearning for sky, and he knew with cold certainty that the dragon must shed part of itself to be reborn. He reached for his sword. The drawn steel sang a low, mournful note that echoed off dark stone, and the hall held its breath. A.K. Steel sighed in Rhaegar's grip, the blade's ghostly note ringing back from black-vaulted stone like the first chord of an ancient dirge. Half the hall away the king flinched, eyes rolling white inside their pits of shadow, as though the sound itself were a burn. Aerys's free hand pawed for purchase among the jars, fingertips leaving fresh smears of blood across green glass. One toppled, clinked on iron, but did not shatter. Jaime Lannister's breathing rasped behind the throne, a counter-rhythm to the hush. Rhaegar stepped forward, boot heels clicking once, twice. Each pace felt like crossing a childhood memory and lighting it afire from within. His mind showed him images, his father tossing him high in the airy gardens of Summerhall, laughter bright as hammered silver. A crown of fresh-forged steel settled upon Arya's dark curls under soft morning sun, slender hands guiding the boy prince's fingers along a map of Westeros, naming every river in the tongue of old Valyria. Cold years had turned that gentle tutor to the gaunt creature crouched atop a throne of razors, yet the sunlit ghost still clutched at Rhaegar's throat. He swallowed and spoke. "Father, lay the dagger down. The city is ours still. We can hold it without fire." "Nawanda." Aerys' smile split his beard like a wound. "Hold." He giggled, voice wobbling to a child's treble. "We will hold nothing but ash, and the ash will sing my name long after flesh forgets its shape. They will speak of Aerys, the cleansing flame." He raised the jar high, poison light slithering up his sleeve. Wildfire lapped glass like a caged beast, hungry for the smallest fracture, the tiniest gasp of air. Rhaegar's sword tip lowered a finger's breadth. "One slip," he said softly, "and there will be no one left to remember any names, mine or yours." Aerys' gaze darted from blade to prince, suspicion worming through the madness. "You doubt me," he hissed. "You always doubted. Even in your mother's belly you twisted away from me. I felt it." He brandished the dagger as though fending off invisible serpents. "Bow. Dragon spawn, or burn." Rhaegar's voice thinned to a whisper. "I bow to the realm. I bow to life. Not flame." He shifted, sword describing a slow half-circle, guiding the king's eye. Jaime inched along the dais rail, cloak brushing iron. Sweat traced gilt lines down his temples. The dance hovered, 3 figures orbiting a liquid emerald death. One wrong breath. Aerys lunged. The jar arced, green light spinning, dagger lancing at Rhaegar's face. The prince flowed sideways, iron sigils on his breastplate screeching as steel scraped iron edges of the throne. His left hand shot out, gloved palms slapping the jar downward. Glass struck stone, rolled. Fluid hissed and streamed, but the stopper held. Rhaegar's sword came up in the same heartbeat, parried the dagger aside with a chime, and Aerys stumbled, robe tangling round spindled legs. "Jaime!" Rhaegar barked. The king's guard's blade flashed, flat of the sword batting the descending jar away before it could crack. It skittered across marble, toppling against a step. Aerys shrieked, talons clutching air where glass had been. Rhaegar caught his father by the wrists. The old king's bones felt bird-light inside fouled velvet. Skin fever hot. He tried to twist the dagger free, but Aerys's grip remained iron-bound. A dernier ferocity. Black nails carved crescents into the prince's gauntlets. Rhaegar pressed closer, smelling rot and wildfire vapor. "Listen," he rasped, forehead almost touching the uterus. "Listen to the blood between our hearts. It is the same. It begs you, stop." For an instant, something human flitted behind the madness, like a memory of rain across parched fields. But then Aerys spat, lips peeling. "Traitor whelp," he crooned, "I fed you on dragon's fire. Now taste it." The dagger punched toward Rhaegar's throat. The prince's armor collar deflected the thrust just wide, but hot pain sliced his cheek. Reflex ruled. His sword arm drove forward, pommel smashing ribs, hilt biting into flesh. As Aerys sagged, Rhaegar twisted, momentum carrying them around, and the dagger clanged from lacerated fingers. Half a dozen rings popped apart, tinkling down steps. Jaime shouted a warning. Aerys' left hand closed on another jar. There was no more room for words, or ghosts, or mercy. Rhaegar's blade passed clean through silk, through cartilage and breath and secrets. It emerged between the king's shoulder blades in a mist of steam and crimson. For one heartbeat, Aerys simply stared, mouth rounding in surprise. Then his knees buckled. The wildfire jar slid from limp fingers and Rhaegar snatched it even as he let his father fall, cradling the lethal glass to his own breast. Aerys hit the marble at the foot of the throne he had worshipped, crown spinning away with a tinny whir before settling upside down in a spreading pool. His last sound was not a word, nor a curse, but a sigh like extinguished flame. Silence poured into the vacuum, thick as oil. Rhaegar remained motionless, sword angled down, jar clasped between gauntlet and cuirass, breathing through parted lips. His pulse hammered every joint, but his thoughts rang with a strange weightless clarity, the song of prophecy transposed to a minor key. He had killed the king. He had killed his father. "Kinslayer," whispered the void. "But also savior," chimed another voice, quieter yet infinitely older. Jaime knelt. One knee clanged, white cloak dragging through the royal blood. "My prince," he said, "I bear witness." Rhaegar exhaled, eyelids trembling. He set the jar carefully atop a step. "Gather every file," he told the Lion Knight. "Chain them in the deepest cellar. Post men who do not drink. Let not a glow of green show within these walls." Jaime bowed his head and rose to the task. Only when the last jar had been carried away behind curtained alcoves did Rhaegar ease his sword down. The point kissed stone beside Aerys's corpse. Blood crept in fractal tendrils toward it, but he took a step back, refusing to let the stain bridge metal and flesh. Varys glided in, soft-footed, gaze flitting from dead king to living prince. "The realm pivots," the eunuch murmured. "Shall I summon the council?" Rhaegar answered without turning. "Summon the realm, but start with the council." The spider vanished. Rhaegar knelt at last, not to the corpse but to lift the fallen crown. It felt lighter than he remembered from boyhood audiences, no more than a circlet of hammered gold and rubies dull as dried blood. He did not place it on his brow. He folded it in a silk cloth torn from his own cloak and pressed the bundle against his chest, where Robert's hammer had nearly ended his life. Only then did the prince allow himself to mourn. Dawn bled across the eastern sky as bells rang not for celebration, but alarm. From the Maiden's Tower Sir Jonathan watched smoke curl above the roof spines of Fleabottom. No wild green flares followed, and he released the breath he had been hoarding since the first clang of iron. Soldiers loyal to Rhaegar lined the streets in silent cordons. Helms frost dull beneath early mist. Already rumors scampered. The Mad King dead, the Dragon Prince crowned by doom, the lions at the gate, the stag on the march. Inside the Red Keep antechamber, candles guttered round a long ash table. Lord Connington, face haggard, leaned close over fresh ink. Half the gold cloaks swear to the prince, half still cower behind Lord Rossart's alchemists. If Robert breaches the river crossing before Tywin comets, he will. Barristan Selmy's armor whispered as he shifted. White cloak draped, blood-speckled but unbowed. The stag scents blood. Rhaegar sat at the table's head, hair unbound, black doublet hiding fresh dressing across his cheek. The wrapped crown lay before him, its rubies winking where dewdrops caught torchlight. He touched neither parchment nor wine. His gaze rested on the empty chair reserved for the hand. "Sir Barristan," he said, voice low but steady. "Ride to the Storm encampment. Bear my personal seal in this writ." He tapped a folded vellum sheet. "Invite Robert to treat beneath peace flags at the King's Gate upon sunset. Alone, mounted, no host within arrowshot." The hall muttered. Connington's palm slapped wood. "7. Save us, you can't trust him. He'll cave your skull on the bridge and ride through our blood with the crown on his belt. Then die." Rhaegar's eyes flicked to his old friend. "If honor has fled him entirely, then I shall flinch at the bridge and your fears are proved. But I saw more in Robert once than fury. And if anywhere within him that flame persists, we may yet spare this city a second butcher's bill." Barristan bowed. "I will ride." Rhaegar's hand stole to his sword hilt. "And you will return, Barristan. The world still needs true knights." After the council dispersed, Varys lingered, fingers steepled. "Grief cloaks you, my prince. The realm will sense its weight." Rhaegar rubbed brow with thumb and forefinger. "Let them. I do not wish a crown of mirth today." He gestured toward the throne room doors. "Have the maesters prepare my father for pyre within the seeptee, with dignity. Whatever else he became, he was a Targaryen." "And the jars?" the eunuch asked, voice silk sliding over steel. "Everyone accounted for. Sealed in the cellars." His gaze sharpened. "Their guardians answer to me, and me alone." Varys bowed from the waist, yet his eyes held a flicker of something, admiration, perhaps, or mild alarm. On the western hills, the lion banners gathered beneath a sky pulsing with thunderheads. Lord Tywin Lannister's pavilion rose at the Alline's heart, crimson silk taut against wind like a drumskin stretched over power. He sat reading when the Raven arrived, black wings beating fatigue through the tent flap. Message tube tapping brass goblet as it landed. Tywin's hand moved precisely, snapping wax, scanning. Once, when Aerys had mocked Joanna Lannister before the whole court, Tywin's face had shown less emotion than stone. So it was now, as he read that the Mad King lay dead by his heir's own hand. He set the parchment down. "Send word to the vanguard," he told Sir Kevan. "We march at dusk, under peace banners, and we march not on Robert's orders. We will see which way the wind turns first." Kevan, thick-necked and graying, frowned. "And if Robert takes this for betrayal, he needs us at his back," Tywin answered. "More than we need him over ours." North of the city, Robert Baratheon's camp sprawled like a wounded bear, wide, ragged, snarling. Cookfires dotted muddy hollows, and every gust brought the scent of wet horse and steel grease. The Warhammer leaned beside Robert's bench, fresh scrubbed but dented. A single ruby of the 7 Rhaegar had shed from his breastplate glittered atop the pommel. Robert toyed with it, while ravens cawed overhead like ill-tempered judges. Barristan Selmy dismounted amid staring Stormlanders. Robert rose, smile broad, but eyes like frost. "Sir Barristan, come to parley or spy? I carry words of peace." Selmy handed the writ. Robert opened it, lips pursing. Around him lords murmured. Jon Arryn steady as granite. Eddard Stark silent under furs. Stannis scowling. Renly's young gaze flicking from hammer to squire's tasks. The writ bore Rhaegar's seal. The dragon offers the stag single combat to decide the crown, or else safe meeting beneath peace banners to seek terms and spare the realm. Signed, Rhaegar Targaryen, Prince Regent, Defender of the Realm. Robert barked a laugh that startled crows from the trees. "He wants a rematch? 7 hells, I'll give it to him." Jon Arryn laid a hand on the younger man's wrist. Consider, if word is true, the Mad King is already dead. The city may yield without one more corpse. Robert's grin faltered, grief flickered. Lyanna remained stolen. Selmy bowed his head. The prince swore to me a message. The Lady Lyanna lives unharmed, and shall be produced at treaty. Eddard's breath caught sharp as drawn iron. Robert glared, chest rising beneath mail. At last he nodded once. Fierce. Sunset then. Alone. He eyed Selmy. Tell your prince, the words he whispered that day at Harrenhal still echo in my skull. If they be lies, I'll smash his truth upon the ground. Selmy mounted. I shall deliver your vow as faithfully. When the White Knight rode, Robert called after him. Voice rougher than anger. Tell him. Should I fall, he's to guard her. Or God strike him down. Barristan inclined his head and galloped, cloak streaming white. Sun sank swollen and ochre behind the hills of Rhaenys as two riders approached the king's gate. Rhaegar rode vermilion armored, helm left behind, silver hair bound at nape. Robert wore hammered bronze inset with dull garnets, antler helm beneath an arm. Their horses stamped like drums of war. Between them lay 20 paces of cobbled bridge and two banners, dragon and stag, fixed to lances stabbed upright in joints of stone. No archers lined walls above. Rhaegar had ordered them withdrawn beyond arrow flight. Robert likewise dismissed spearmen. The only watchers were ravens blackening crenellations, and a cluster of silent lords on distant ramparts. Eddard, Jon, Barristan, Connington. Robert dismounted with a grunt, eyes narrowing at the fresh scar tracing Rhaegar's cheek. Did the crown bite you, prince? It bit my father, Rhaegar replied. The scar is its apology. Robert's knuckles whitened round hammerhaft. Did you swing the sword? I did. Wind hummed through empty merlons. Robert's jaw flexed. Lyanna. She waits south, Rhaegar said. Safe, and free to choose her road. I vow it on the graves of my children. Benne? Robert's eyes flickered, the invincible aura cracking enough to show the boy who had blushed when a Northmaid pressed a sprig of winter rose into his fist. Then why this war? He demanded, voice husky. Why all this blood? Prophecy, Rhaegar whispered, gaze drifting to the darkening sky where first stars pricked. A burden laid wrong. I thought to forge a dawn and instead summoned dusk. He met the stag's gaze straight. Help me set it right. Robert's laugh held no joy. You killed my kin? My cousin, my uncles. I slew no kin of yours. Rhaegar's voice steadied to iron. I shielded Lyanna from men worse than myself. Ask her when she stands before you. Robert stepped closer until only breath and memory separated them. And if her word still names you thief, then take my head, Rhaegar said. He unbuckled sword belt and let it fall ringling upon cobble. Unarmed, he opened hands. But spare the city. Spare the babes in their mother's arms. I will yield crown and life if she calls me traitor. The minutest shiver crossed Robert's shoulders. He stared, searching for mockery, finding none. Time held. From the wall a horn blew, a single low note. Robert glanced up, eyes burning blue as storm at sea. Then he bent, scooped Rhaegar's sword, weighed it. We share a taste for fine steel, it seems. Keep it, Rhaegar said. Mayhap it will teach you songs my hammer never could. Robert exhaled a sound somewhere between sneer and sigh. He planted the blade point down. We will talk again tomorrow. Bring her. If she smiles on you, I'll sheath hatred. If not. He left the words hanging like a pendulum. Turning, he strode to his horse. Rhaegar watched him ride north into dusk until bronze and bay dissolved into shadow. That night, the Red Keep breathed unease. In a windowless solar Rhaegar unwrapped the crown beneath a guttering lamp. He set it on a table between two flames, one candle of sweet practical beeswax, the other a thin taper of greenish resin that hissed and smoked, alchemists' incense used in warding rituals. The crown's rubies caught both lights, reflecting gold and sick jade. He considered which hue would devour the other. Footsteps. Jaime entered bearing a slender box. "From the cellars," he said. "We found it locked beneath the royal bed. Inside, wrapped in moth-eaten velvet, lay parchments bearing the seals of Pyromancer's guild contracts. Hundreds of amphorae secreted under septs, along passages, even within crypt niches." Rhaegar's belly iced. He spilled the scrolls across the table like dried entrails of some murdered future. "How many casks remain unknown?" 40, perhaps," Jaime said. "Maybe more." Rhaegar pressed forefinger to temple. "We cannot scour every wall before dawn. If one striker's spark survives..." Jaime's voice turned brittle. "Let me take the white cloaks. Search until sunrise." "Do," Rhaegar said. "But take torches only of common pitch. And if you find even a whisper of green, drown it." The Lion Knight bowed. Before leaving, he halted. "My prince, my king. I swore to keep him safe." His gaze flicked toward the place where Aerys had fallen. "I failed." "You saved the city," Rhaegar answered. "I watched while you killed blood." Rhaegar's lips thinned. "So did I." He reached, squeezed Jaime's shoulder. "Your vigil is not done, sir. Stand it with honor." When Jaime departed, Rhaegar poured wine, drank none. He stared at the crown until candle wax carved tiny rivers along its sides, crystallizing blood-red mirrors of flame. He wondered whether crowns melted differently in wildfire than in honest forge. South, far beyond walls and armies, the Tower of Joy cut a lonely silhouette against night. Moon-silvered palestone, paling further where Arthur Dayne's blade dawn leaned upon a merlin. Milky as first light. Within a sun-warmed chamber, Lyanna Stark sat on a window bench, shutters open to dry desert air. Her belly was no longer flat. Her hand moved there unconsciously, feeling the child's soft stirring. The maester's draught tasted of mint and rue herb, but would not lull her to sleep. Instead, she listened to distant mountain winds, and the slower whisper of water in cisterns below. Footfalls quick and light. Sir Geralt Hightower entered, cloak brushing rushes. "A raven from the prince. He rides at dawn." Lyanna's breath hitched. She read the letter twice, fingers shaking at the seal's crack. Rhaegar had killed Aerys, he wrote, and ended a war of fire before it began. He begged her to come to King's Landing, within the month, if her strength allowed, to speak truth before lords and realm, to choose her own fate. Her voice, when it came, was quiet. "If I ride now, I risk the babe. The prince will send litters, healers. The city is chaotic." Lyanna closed her eyes. Jon's face flickered there, pale good brother, steady and sorrow smiled. Robert's laughter at Winterfell feasts. The north wind carrying scents of pine and snow. "Tell Rhaegar." She whispered, "Truth rides faster than any litter. I will come when I can stand." Sir Geralt bowed low. As he straightened, tired lines etched deeper at his mouth. He may not hold the city so long. Lyanna laid hands upon swelling life beneath rib and womb alike. "Then we must pray the realm still has ears when I speak." Morning broke damp and pale over King's Landing. Tywin Lannister's column wound along the gold road in measured silence, crimson reflecting sunrise like blood on water. At the city's edge, Rhaegar himself greeted the lions. He came without escort, clad in dark riding leathers, a single khalasar ruby at throat. Hand raised, he called salutations in the ancient tongue of the high hills, the one language Tywin's tutor had once taught both boys as children of court. Surprise flickered behind the Lord of Casterly Rock's statuesque composure. They spoke then, two men used to command, circling meaning like duelists testing guard. Tywin demanded confirmation of Aerys' death. Rhaegar gave it. Tywin spoke of his daughter's grief. Rhaegar offered contrition. Tywin's eyes narrowed at mention of Aelia and the Martells. He glimpsed vulnerability where he had hoped to find arrogance. "My daughter was once promised to you," Tywin said. Voice mild as drawn silk. "I was a fool not to see her worth," Rhaegar answered. "The fault lies with me alone." Tywin's silence weighed tons, until at last he inclined head. "Foolish princes rarely admit fault. We shall see if wise kings do better." He signaled his riders. The lions entered the city under truce. Inside the Red Keep, many a courtier blinked at the sight. Lannister men posted side by side with Targaryen guards at gatehouses where wildfire had almost lain in wait. Tywin walked the corridors like a surveyor, marking every fault line in stone and in men. Rhaegar did not shadow him. Instead, he knelt among alchemists' records, scrawling commands, caches to be unearthed, tunnels flooded, pyromancers confined until their guild's new charter swore fealty to life over flame. In the sept white smoke coiled from censers round Aerys bier, there Rhaegar laid the wrapped crown atop his father's chest. Monks chanted. No herald proclaimed a new king that day, nor the next. Rumor called the prince by 100 names: Kinslayer, Regent, Prince in Chains. But he wore none. Robert's second ride found him flanked by Eddard alone. Sun glared off the Northman's wolf helm, its silver washed with dust as they trotted toward dragon banners. This time Rhaegar waited on foot beside a litter draped in blue and white. When curtains parted and Lyanna stepped down, the world froze. She wore a loose sky-colored gown belted high, concealing little. Her face carried desert paleness, but her gray eyes shone water clear. Robert's hammer slipped from limp fingers. He moved toward her, not battle stride but halting child step. She smiled sadly. "Lyanna," he breathed. She reached, took his calloused hand, pressed it to swell where life stirred. "This child is Rhaegar's," she said, gentle but unyielding. "And mine. Listen before anger slays the living." Robert looked past her at the prince. Fury and heartbreak warred across his features. Nostrils flared. Then he exhaled ragged and sank to one knee. Head bowed, shoulders heaving. In that instant, the realm's bloodlust lost its champion. Eddard approached, wrapping cloak round sister and friend alike. Tears streaked ash down Northman cheeks. Lyanna lifted Robert's chin until he met her gaze. "I love you," she whispered, "but not as the songs foretell. Forgive that truth." Robert blinked, a sigh escaping like caged thunder finally loosed. He laughed, choked, and laughed again. Bitter, cleansing, unburdened. "I'll never love aught half so fierce as you," he said, "though you break me with one breath." He kissed her knuckles and rose. Facing Rhaegar, he opened both hands. "There's no more war in me, dragon." The prince placed a palm over heart, bowing. "Then let war die here." Eddard's voice cut firm. "Yet debts remain. Houses broken. Sons dead. They will have justice," Rhaegar answered. "But justice born of peace, not sword." Thus the Treaty of the Two Crowns was inked on the cobbles of the King's Gate. Dragon, stag, and direwolf sealing parchments with wax still warm from the lantern of fate. Jon Arryn served witness, Lord Tywin silent behind a mask of measured respect. Clauses promised amnesty for soldiers, reparations to the North and Stormlands, a council to draft a new charter of royal power, and a single clause, whispered more than written. Should Lyanna Stark bear a child, that child would secure North and Crown both, its name to join dragon and wolf in heraldry unknown. Seasons turned. In late summer, a comet flared above the fingers, red as the scratch on Rhaegar's cheek. Some named it Dragon's Breath, others a sword in the sky. In the Red Keep's nursery, Lyanna rocked a dark-haired babe who cooed at the window's fiery streak-eyed. Elia Martell, walking with measured grace despite old fevers, watched from the doorway. She carried her own daughter, Rhaenys, whose eyes tracked the newborn with solemn curiosity. Blood once set as rivals mingled now in lullabies and soft blankets. Rhaegar, crowned at last beneath a dawn-touched sky on the hill of Rhaenys, ruled not from throne of melted swords but from a marble seat newly carved. Its arms shaped as wings, its back a single rising plume. The iron throne he left where his father died, shrouded under velvet and chained shut. One day, rumor said, it would be carted piece by piece to the Blackwater mouth and sunk in deep water, a warning to those who forged rule through fear. Robert Baratheon returned to Storm's End with ghost memories riding pillion. He drank, he sparred, But never again did he lift banner against the crown. His friendship with Eddard deepened to bedrock. When the White Raven called winter's approach, Robert rode north to knelt at Lyanna's child's naming, gifting the boy a miniature hammer of black steel. He laughed as the babe gripped it with surprising strength, and tears glimmered in the corners of his eyes. Tywin Lannister, denied the crown he once eyed for his bloodline, turned his gaze westward. Casterly Rock's coffers filled, Lannisport thrived, and Cersei, widowed to no king, grew flint behind green eyes. She walked the gilded passages of her father's keep as though measuring them for hidden doors. In Dorne, Prince Doran toasted a fragile peace, while the sand ship's sails whispered of opportunity. He sent spies to watch the Riverlands, where petty lords plotted to avenge insults both real and imagined. Whispers brewed, but for now, the realm healed. The Tower of Joy stood empty when autumn winds gusted through its unbarred windows, stone echoing with remembered vows. Sir Arthur Dayne returned dawn to Starfall, where it gleamed white upon night blue silk, waiting for the day a new hero might draw it forth. Gerald Hightower took command of the city watch, forging them into true brothers of gold and black beneath lantern-lit towers. As years edged onward, small folk spoke of the kinslayer's peace. Half shuddering, bards strummed ballads of a prince who broke prophecy to save the world he loved, though each singer favored a different verse. Some said Rhaegar's sword wept blood eternally. Others swore no blade was drawn, that king fell by whispered word alone. Truth became malleable under song, but the living breathed free of wildfire's shadow. Yet within dim vaults beneath the Red Keep, one final jar of wildfire remained unaccounted. It lay forgotten behind a false wall. Stopper rotted, glass hairline cracked, liquid quivering at the brink of air. Rhaegar slept above it nights, dreaming of strange white walkers across wastes of blue twilight. Some dawn soon, he knew. Fires yet unburned would demand accounting. For now, peace lasted on a dragon's breath, and a mother's lullaby. Soft, perilous, luminous as starlight on a sword's edge. And across the narrow sea, in lands where dragons once danced above spires of Valyria, ashes stirred in a lonely wind, curling toward the west, as though remembering the taste of flame. Ka. Warm dusk smoldered over the black water when the king slipped from the Red Keep in a plain traveler's cloak. No heralds sang, only gulls wheeled above the water, crying like lost children in the fading light. Rhaegar rode alone at first, guiding a steady gray gelding down the river road where lemon trees scented the air with faint citrus. Past spired villas and fishermen's shacks he went, until salt spray clung to his lashes and the last tower of the keep sank behind a bend of reeds. He rode not to escape kings, never truly escaped, but to breathe, to listen, and to test the pulse of the realm, far from marbled halls. He found what he sought on a sandy rise overlooking the mouth of the bay, a place where driftwood piled like the ribs of ancient leviathans. There an old woman tended a brazier ringed with polished stones. Her hair streamed silver white in the wind, yet her back stood straight as a spear haft. When Rhaegar dismounted, she lifted a twig of cedar to the coals, coaxing a curl of fragrant smoke. "It is a long way for a king to walk alone," she said without turning. Her voice was low, cool waves breaking over shale. Rhaegar removed his hood. The woman smiled, as if the sight confirmed more than rank. "Ah, I wondered which of the dragon princes would come. The song followed you, child, like a distant drum." He crouched beside her fire, palms open. "You know songs, wise mother? I know when the wind misplaces a verse." She tapped ash from the cedar. "There was to be a battle here, rivers of green flame. I tasted it on the shore sand. Now the taste has thinned. Something in the choosing has spared us." "Endaro." Rhaegar let silence settle, disturbed only by hiss of embers. "A choosing? Yes. One life for 10,000? Yet the gods weigh kinslaying heavy." The woman plucked a coal and crushed it between finger and thumb. Sparks died like fireflies. "All births are bought in blood, even a kingdom's rebirth. The price is never small." He looked across black water at speckles of lantern light on far quays. "Will peace hold? The peace you forged? It floats, young dragon, on wings stretched wide. Wind rips wings. Storms melt sinew, but wings may mend. She dipped the cedar again, inhaled rising scent. Forgive yourself, then see what work remains. They spoke no more. He left a gold dragon at her feet and returned to the city under starlight, thinking of wings and wind and the lone wildfire jar still buried beneath his floors. Moon by moon the capital mended. Fresh-cut stone replaced melted blocks along the dragon gate. The sept of Baelor rang with hammers as masons patched vaults where heat fissures had crept. Small folk spoke of the kinslayer's peace first in whispers, then in ordinary tones, as if their tongues tested the words for poison and found only a tart aftertaste that lessened over time. Bakers laughed again in the dawn markets. Sailors bellowed shanties while crossing chains for dry dock, and pig boys dared once more to race each other up Visinia's hill. Inside the keep, however, air remained taut. Tywin Lannister stalked council chambers like a lean, red-gold panther. He spoke in clipped phrases, each recommendation edged toward Lannister advantage. Lord Connington bristled, but often yielded. The realm could scarcely rebuff Casterly Rock's gold, while treasury coffers yawned like cracked cisterns. Doran's emissaries pressed for Dornish autonomy. Hoster Tully, aging and gout-struck, lobbied for repairs to river dikes. The Reach demanded tariffs be lifted on Arbor wine to soothe Victory's bitter throat. Rhaegar listened, sifted, and shaped compromise from competing hungers, though each success left him more deeply aware of shifting fault lines. The night his air quickened within Lyanna, deep winter lightning rolled offshore. She found him in the solar, bent over scrawled maps of grain routes. "Come, husband," she murmured, cheeks flushed by the climb. "Listen." She placed his hand below her ribs. Beneath warm linen, a flutter passed, swift and sure. Rhaegar closed his eyes as if hearing a new chord. "Already so strong," he whispered. "Your strength," she teased. "I merely house it." He kissed her temple, but a shadow lingered. She felt it in the stiffness of his shoulders, and after candles were snuffed, she felt it still when he lay awake, breath counting some invisible measure. At last, she turned, stroking hair silver bright in the moonlit chamber. "You are not your father," she said. "I own his sins, though," he answered, "and my own. When the realm looks at us, it sees flame. It forgets new growth beneath the ash. Then we will remind them, not with decree, but by living." Her words settled into him like seeds. When spring thaw slicked the Trident banks, Rhaegar rode north with a column of peacekeepers. Tyrell cavalry in pale green, Arryn knights beneath sky-blue falcons, and 20 Dothraki exiles who had sworn him fealty after fleeing a cow whose fires had consumed their children. The king wore no crown, only a plain steel breastplate repaired since the river. At Maidenpool he met Jon Arryn, and together they inspected dikes swollen by meltwater. At Derry he spoke to widows who still cursed the 7 rubies glittering in river silt. He listened more than he spoke, and left each hamlet lighter in purse, heavier in promise. Word drifted ahead of him like pollen. By the time the host approached River Run, farmers lined the road tossing handfuls of seed beneath the horses' hooves. A riverland's blessing meant to bind traveler to soil. Hoster Tully, gout or no, limped to his gatehouse parapet. "I half thought to see my banners creep behind staghorns forever," he told Rhaegar that evening over river trout. "Instead the dragon comes bearing watering cans." Rhaegar smiled. "Water is cheaper than blood, my lord." "Cheaper?" "Aye, but it waters weeds as well as flowers. Keep your scythe sharp." "Many." Warned thus, Rhaegar pressed on to Harrenhal, where Blackstone towers still wept rain inside their shell-chewed crowns. There he convened a congress of small lords whose lands had suffered worst. They bargained like starving crows. When the last parchment sealed, relief wagons rolled cross-country, escorted by mixed guards, whose sigils twined dragon, trout, and sun spear. It was a mosaic unseen since Jaehaerys's reign. Old men blinked as though glimpsing a younger memory. In a crumbling godswood at Harrenhal, Rhaegar lingered at twilight. Willow boughs whispered above him, recalling Lyanna's laughter, Robert's thunderous charge, and the cruel arc of Robert's hammer. He touched rib armor where the dent remained. In silence he told the wood, "I will mend this realm as I mend this bruise. Slowly, layer by layer, never hiding the scar." Summer's height brought the planting festival in King's Landing, revived for the first time in decades. Streets filled with perfumed rushes. Children balanced on barrel tops to glimpse mummers who juggled polished apples. Lyanna watched processions from a shaded balcony, Elia at her side. Below, Dornish dancers braided ribbons with northern drummers, while the city watch kept a wary but genial perimeter. Some small folk still spat when gold cloaks passed. Memories of extortion were not forgotten, but most wore tentative smiles, as though the very notion of merriment felt delicate. When the Harvest Queen's float neared, Rhaegar descended to greet Lyanna with a single blue winter rose lavished from a Reach hothouse. He placed it behind her ear, and the crowd roared approval that felt uncoaxed, unchoreographed. Rather a pulse of shared relief, yet in shadowed alleys murmurs twitched. If the wolf woman birthed the heir, what of Elia's children? What of Viserys? Seeds of rivalry needed no watering. Viserys, tall now and hawk-faced at 12, pushed through attendance that evening to confront his brother. "The throne is mine," he declared, voice cracking between indignation and fear. "Father promised," Mother said. Rhaegar dismissed guards. "Come, little brother." They sat by a moonlit fountain where carp drifted like living pearls. Mother was gentle but seldom spoke of thrones. She wept when they locked her away. She said the realm stole from us. "The realm feared our father's rage," Rhaegar replied softly. "Fear harms both the fearful and the feared." Viserys scowled, shoving wet hair from eyes. "Are we to fear wolves then? That northern bastard you make heir?" "No bastards here," Rhaegar said. "The babe will be legitimate, as you are legitimate. We are brothers, not rivals." The boy's chin trembled. "They whisper Mad King in the halls again." "They mean me next." Rhaegar drew him close. "They said the same of me once. Prove them wrong. Learn their names. Greet them first. Show them a prince who listens." He pressed into Viserys' hand a polished ruby from the Trident. "Carry this. It is flawed. A vein of soot runs through the heart, yet it shines. So may you." Viserys studied the gem. In its core, a black filament curled like frozen smoke. His fingers closed round it. South in Dorne, the sandship anchored at Sunspear. Obara, Nymeria, and Tyne met on a shaded terrace, while scorpions scuttled across sun-cracked tiles. Their uncle Oberyn lounged on a wicker couch, eyes glinting mischief. "King's peace blooms," he said, sipping spiced wine. "Yet each bloom hides a thorn." Obara traced a sand map with her spear tip. "Lord Tywin trains his girl like a sword. Reports say Cersei's tongue is sharper than lion claws." "Tywin forgets," Tyne murmured, smiling faintly. "That sharp swords may cut the sheath." Nymeria flicked a pebble into the fountain. "And in King's Landing a wildfire ember still sleeps." Oberyn raised a brow. "So the whisper birds sing, but who will cup such flame?" "Perhaps the girl with lion eyes," Obara offered. "Or perhaps," Oberyn said, rising, "one of us shall pluck it first." He twirled a blade slim as sunlight. Above, a vulture circled the broken sky. Winter came early to the wall. Rangers returned speaking of silent forests, of game vanished as if some pale fear scoured hoofprint and feather alike. Lord Commander Corgyle dispatched raven after raven south. Few reached their perch. The ones that did carried terse warnings. Winds shift, dead walk. In the Red Keep's rookery those scraps drew skeptical glances. Tales of whites had fluttered across centuries like bats, surfacing every generation to startle and fade. Yet Maester Aemon, his eyes milked by age, read the runes with trembling fingers and whispered, "The cold remembers." Rhaegar ordered additional black cloth, salted pork, and obsidian daggers shipped north. A gesture, little more. But he would not ignore the old man's sigh. News of a single ranger found frozen upright against a weirwood, eyes blue as glacier glass. Reached court midwinter and chilled corridors more deeply than any draft. Rhaegar moved 3 battalions to Moat Cailin, citing bandit raids. Privately, he tasked Barristan to prepare a rapid march plan to the wall should ravens fail entirely. Lyanna read those reports with steady resolve. My father always feared distant snows more than southern steel, she told Elia while rocking her infant son, named Jaehaerys, for the conciliator. We measure risk by memory, and the north remembers frost. Elia adjusted her shawl. Memory may be our strongest shield, and our weakest link. What do you fear? Lyanna asked. Quiet corridors, Elia answered, watching torches gutter. Plots grow best where feet rarely tread. Plots indeed. In late Frostmoon, Ser Yalabharg Sho, a minor prince exiled from the Summer Isles, was found strangled outside the dragon pit. On his person lay purchase orders for pig iron, sulfur, and saltpeter, enough to rival a pyromancer's storehouse. The signatures were forged, but one bore a near-perfect seal of House Lannister. Lord Tywin denied knowledge, yet his eyes flashed flint when Rhaegar revealed the finding. Someone seeks to wedge lions from dragons, he growled. Devious but foolish. We will snare them. He sealed King's Landing, ordered night patrols doubled, and within a fortnight, 3 smugglers dangled from spikes on the city wall. 2 Myrish, 1 Pentoshi. Their confessions named no patron. Varys tutted. Tortured tongues wagged poorly, he noted, and rarely in the right direction. While tension strangled the capital, wildfire men labored deep underground cataloging jars secreted by Eris. 43 they recovered, ferried upriver to Dragonstone, where damp caves and unlit corridors offered relative safety. But the 44th jar evaded every map, every whispered memory. Rhaegar kept its absence quiet, confiding only in Barristan and Jaime. One storm-lashed night, Jaime led a half-dozen torchbearers into the subcrypts beneath Maegor's holdfast. Dust lay so thick their boots left trenches. After hours of searching, they found a false wall cunningly papered to match granite. Behind it yawned a niche barely large enough for a man to creep. At its end sat a tarnished jar, hairline crack weeping green tears. The men froze, breath fumbling. Jaime motioned them back. Alone, he unfastened his cloak, wrapped jar and crack alike in thick wool, binding with strips torn from his own tunic until no glimmer showed. Carrying it gingerly, he surfaced into howling wind. The king was waiting in the courtyard, rain-drenching silver hair, and hammering the cracked breastplate he refused to replace. Jaime set the bundle down. It beats, he whispered, us though alive. Rhaegar nodded once. Come. They crossed sodden flagstones to a forge where coals glowed dark crimson. The master smith, sworn to silence, awaited. Into a crucible of melted lead they lowered the jar. Gas hissed. Flame roared blue, then green, then white. Moments stretched. Sweat rivulets mixing with rain. At last the jar's outline sagged, gave, vanished under shining gray. Lead cooled fast, locking death inside a coffin more enduring than crystal. When the mass dulled, Rhaegar took a hammer and solemn, struck 3 times. No shard cracked, no light seeped. He exhaled. Jaime's shoulders unknotted. At last it sleeps. For good, Rhaegar agreed. Yet he stared long at the ingot's surface, as if the void beneath might still harbor a glint of emerald rage. The newborn prince grew sturdy, raven-haired like his mother, violet-eyed as his father. In the first blush of spring he teetered across Queen Lyanna's solar, clutching a carved direwolf. Aelias' daughter Rhaenys, graceful at 10, guided him with patient hands, while Crown Prince Aegon looked on in thoughtful silence. Rhaenys' sandal brushed a marble lip. She stumbled, catching herself. The toddler laughed, delighted, but Aegon frowned. Later, he cornered Rhaegar in the library. Father, must my brother be heir? Grand Maester tells me King Jaehaerys of old named 2 of his sons princes, but only one wore the crown. Could we share? Rhaegar set aside a tome on dragonbone fortifications. A crown weighed by 2 heads falls apart, yet a kingdom can rest on many shoulders. Bendawo. Aegon pondered this. Then make me sword. Let Jaehaerys be crown. Would you follow his rule? If he is wise, Aegon said with surprising candor, and if not, I would advise him to wisdom. Rhaegar smiled. A good sword guards not hacks. You may earn such steel, my son. That night, he wrote letters to Sunspear and Storm's End proposing fosterage exchanges. When the children reached proper age, political critics muttered, but Sir Barristan alleged quietly that binding children in friendship might quell wars more surely than any edict. In the Vale of Arryn, a different wind blew. Jon Arryn's health waned, white in beard and brow, and his childless marriage left house elders fretting. Petyr Baelish, minor lord of a cold tidal island, flitted around Gulltown whispering rumors that the Hand's seat might shift in more agile directions. Rhaegar smelled fertile intrigue and invited Jon to reside months at court. The old falcon accepted, bringing his shy young ward, Catelyn Tully's sister Lysa, for her first taste of city life. Petyr followed, pockets clinking. One twilight, Lyanna encountered Petyr on a terrace overlooking candle-speckled Blackwater. He bowed elegantly, eyes flicking to the ribbon of winter roses binding her braid. Your Grace's flower glows even after sunset, he observed. Flowers endure, she answered, sensing the snare. Endure, yes, but roses require tending. A negligent gardener may spur them wild. Lyanna studied him. Wild roses often have sharper thorns. Petyr's smile thinned. As she turned away, she caught his reflection in a glass pane, eyes calculating lengths of hedge yet to trim. Letters from the wall grew dire. Rangers had vanished by pairs, then by threes. Tracks ended in circles of crushed hoarfrost, no prints leaving. Rhaegar convened a hidden council. Starks, Arryns, Mormonts summoned to the capital's northern annex, while festivities paraded outside to mark Jaehaerys' second name day. Maps sprawled over inlaid tables, sable pawns marking castles, white shards marking rumored white sightings. Lyanna insisted on attending. Maesters balked at exposing the queen to talk of ghouls. But Rhaegar waved them silent. We face winter together, he said. As the council debated reinforcing Eastwatch, a raven struck the shutters, half dead from exhaustion. Its message bore Maester Aemon's trembling script. Last hearth fires fail. Send fire of other kind. The ink trailed into a blotch of darkness. No further ravens came. Rhaegar committed at once. 2,000 spears north, under Lord Benjen Stark. Obsidian blades forged at Dragonstone. Wildfire flasks prudently corked. He would go himself, but council argued the realm risked decapitation if southern lords sensed weakness. He compromised. Command would pass to Lord Commander Barristan, with Prince Aegon as his squire to learn winter's face. Aelia paled but agreed. Aegon received the news with solemn pride, already polishing the small shield bearing both dragon and direwolf sigils, entwined. Robert rode from Storm's End to join the convoy at Winterfell. When he embraced Lyanna beneath hearthlight, old ache flickered, but time had carved new ridges in each heart. They spoke not of might have been, only of will be. Of children who would play together under white weirwood boughs, of mead yet to be shared at harvest. Later, Robert clasped Rhaegar's forearm, eyes shining. I broke your chest once, he said gruffly. I will break any darkness that threatens it again. Rhaegar clasped back. Break it far from my wife's hearing, and I'll grant you a barrel of arbor gold. Laughter rumbled between them like distant thunder, warm in its promise. As the host marched north, Cersei Lannister traveled south, summoned to the capital by her father, ostensibly for courtly season. She arrived garbed in dusk-green velvet that made her hair blaze like autumn leaves. Viserys watched from a gallery rail, intrigued and wary. Cersei measured the boy with one slow blink, then smiled. A sharpened crescent. At feast that night, she spoke little yet listened keenly. Where tongues spilled wine loosened slander of dragon favoring wolf. Her lashes lowered but her ears pricked. Later she drifted through quiet corridors until she found the library vault. A long time she stood before a tapestry of old Valyria's doom, gaze lingering on plumes of green-tinted flame. When she turned, Varys lounged in the archway, fingers laced. "Books enlighten," he purred. "But some tales burn the hands of the incautious." Cersei's smile barely twitched. "And some spiders weave silk so fine they forget it can strangle." Varys dipped. "May you weave and not be tangled, my lady." He drifted off, slippers whisking. Cersei's eyes narrowed after him. Far to the east beyond Valyria's smoking ruins, a red priestess watched embers swirl in a brass bowl. Within coals, she saw a kneeling king striking molten lead, a wolf queen cradling a dark-haired babe, and a white horizon splitting under black wings. Fire hissed. A single coal cracked, raining sparks that spelled a name older than Ashai. She breathed it once, twice, until her lips bled light. Then she rose, donned scarlet robes, and ordered her crew to set sail for Westeros. Autumn crowned the realm in copper leaves, when the first whispers of sickness touched the north host. Rangers returned from a ranging west of the Shadow Tower, eyes rimmed crimson, skin drained waxen. They spoke little, only shivered though fires blazed. Within nights, 3 were dead, black fluid crusting lips. Barristan ordered quarantine. Maesters brewed pine pitch and willow bark, but the sickness outpaced herb and prayer. Snow muted hooves as they carted corpses beyond the palisade, burning them high as the law of ice commanded. Flames hissed, throwing sparks into a sky already dusted with early stars. Prince Aegon assisted grimly, fingers blistered from torchwork. He wrote to his father by raven. "This shadow seeps into bone like cold itself. I will not yield to it, but no, I am afraid." Rhaegar read the parchment at dawn, and felt a tremor as real as the hammer blow that once dented him. He sent back words of steel wrapped in velvet. "Fear guides caution, my son, but courage steers the hand. Let both advise you." That same morning, Lyanna woke screaming. Her hand clutched her side where a phantom chill burned deep. Rhaegar soothed her until tremors eased, then dispatched ravens to Barristan bearing fresh supplies, limes for scurvy, brandy for courage, and a locket containing a single winter rose petal pressed paper thin. He hoped small tokens might knit hearts across leagues of snow. Within the Red Keep, Petyr Baelish's schemes sprouted vines. He cultivated Lady Lysa's loneliness, feeding it songs of gallant rescue from dull errand duty. When she confessed one night that her monthlies had faltered, Petyr smiled a smile, whose edges never warmed his eyes. "A child is a key," he murmured. "Keys open cages." Thus when news reached court that Lord Jon's cough had worsened, Petyr slipped a sealed jar of Dornish pepper wine to Lysa, assuring her it would ease the old man's throat. The jar's true gift lay inside cork fibers, a tincture distilled from rare mushroom spores that coaxed sleep so deep the heart might forget to beat. Lysa, trusting, set the jar at bedside. Within 2 fortnights, Jon Arryn breathed his last. Grief seized court. Rhaegar wept openly for his hand and mentor, then named Lord Benjen Stark, just returned south with half the host, to stand interim hand. Tywin's lips compressed at the appointment. The Vale's falcon lords muttered that winter wolves scented power. Amid morning, Petyr comforted widow Lysa with whispers of swift marriage and safety far from eagles' nests. She clung to him, unaware of strings looped around both their throats. In gloom-bound counsel Tywin pressed. The realm now lacked a master of coin. He proposed Baelish, praising his uncommon acumen. Rhaegar looked to Varys, who blinked demonstration of neutrality. Lyanna watched Tywin instead, noting the cold calculation in his gaze. After a pause, Rhaegar demurred, appointment postponed until proper vetting. Petyr bowed smiling, but inside a coal spark. Winter roared down, burying passes, yet at east watch torches guttered still atop the wall. Barristan's men fought skirmishes against pale figures, glimpsed only at dawn's gray gash. Shapes that vanished when sun rose yet left behind prints that steamed faintly. One night horns blared twice, the cry for wildlings. Hundreds came, frostbitten, half-starved, pleading. Among them walked a giant of a man with hair white as chalk, dragging a weeping girl no older than 4 on a makeshift sled. He named himself 1-1, in broken tongue, and crossed the gate only when Aegon offered him meat with his own hands. The maester set quills blazing. A giant under the wall, another omen. South of Moat Cailin, Tyrell outriders found bones picked clean along snow-dusted hedgerows. They sent word to Highgarden of wolves tall as horses. Margaery Tyrell, clever at 15, advised her father to withdraw rose banners to defensible manners. Mace Tyrell, eager to parade martial virtue, dismissed fears. Inwardly he fretted how easily petals bruised under frost. Amid these portents, the Red Priestess arrived. Melisandre Vashai she named herself, though ship logs recorded no port of origin. She petitioned audience, claiming dreams of darkness stirring in the north, swam distantly from her flames. Rhaegar received her flanked by Benjen and Varys. Melisandre's eyes glowed lamplight red as she bowed. "There is only one war, your grace," she intoned. "The war for Dawn. All other wars are shadows cast by its fires." Rhaegar studied her. "Dawn hangs at starfall," he said, "and men bleed enough beneath lesser steels." She smiled without humor. "Steel cannot sever night. Only the prince who was promised may." Varys's bald head inclined. "Many princes are promised in many tales. Only one bleeds starlight," Melisandre whispered, gaze burning into Rhaegar's scar. The faint crimson line glimmered as though remembering the river's rubies. That night, Rhaegar dreamt of a field of snow, stained red. Above, flew a dragon wrought of pale fire, three-headed as prophecy, but beneath its wings marched a column of blue-eyed dead wielding swords of freezing mist. He woke drenched, Lyanna stirring beside him. In the candle's gutter he saw on his palm a single line of fresh blood where the scar had reopened, though no wound lay beneath. He pressed the palm over his heart. No matter the piece he carved, a deeper war sharpened its spears beyond mortal law. Cersei's machinations ripened next. Under guise of charitable tour of orphanages, she visited cellars once sealed by Aerys' alchemists. In dusty chambers she found no jars. Rhaegar's men had scoured them, but she found ledgers detailing formulae of the pyromancer's craft. These she copied by candlestub. Smuggling pages and bodice linings back to her apartments. By winter's peak, she commanded a hidden coterie of disgraced alchemists exiled after Aerys' fall. They met in a wine cellar beneath a ruined sept outside the city wall, stoking small green flares in crucibles of beaten copper. One night, a jar burst, incinerating 2 novices. Cersei watched flame-lit corpses and felt something akin to exultation. Fire, she mused, obeys none but itself, and those bold enough to unchain it. Tywin suspected but lacked proof. He confronted his daughter in the Lion Tower Solar. "Do not play with relics of madness," he warned, voice iced. Cersei met him eye for eye. "Madness saved the city, father, when wielded by the right hand. Imagine what it could win for ours." "Menendo." Tywin's jaw clenched. "One day, the realm may need a lion's roar. It does not require a lioness-breathing plague." She smiled, yet her gaze cooled. "The realm will accept what keeps it alive." After she left, Tywin stared out at the fog-bound city lights, and wondered which seeds he had sown now grew teeth. News from the north grew grimmer. Barristan wrote of a sickness that no maester's leeching assuaged, bones blackened from within, flesh freezing but refusing to slough. He enclosed a brittle fragment chipped from a victim's wrist. Maesters found its marrow turned to crystalline dust. They named it ice rot. None knew cure. Rhaegar's council debated. Some urged recalling the wall garrison lest the contagion creep south unseen. Melisandre argued for sending priests with fires of Arlor to cleanse the afflicted, but Benjen feared panic if foreign red robes replaced trusted healers. In the end, Rhaegar dispatched additional food, obsidian, and ravens trained to fly under winter cloud. Above all, he sent words. "Hold the line." Privately, he penned Aegon. "Remember the songs I sang of knights who stood when standing seemed folly. Be their echo, but temper valor with prudence. Tell Barristan to live." War demands survivors to speak its lesson. Time warped under siege of ice and intrigue. Jaehaerys toddled through vaulted corridors, scattering maesters like startled pigeons. Rhaenys strummed a Dornish harp, teaching Viserys chords that thrummed restless through the keep. Across the water at Dragonstone, a clutch of 3 petrified eggs warmed daily in braziers at Elias' request. She swore the rock shifted beneath her fingertips, though the steward heard nothing. In Braavos, murmurs spread of Westerosi gold, purchasing sellswords, Tyrell envoys. Some said. Others named Casterly Rock. The Iron Bank weighed risks and dispatched auditors westward. War might sprout despite peace's bloom, and debt cared little which banner flew. One frost-blue dawn Rhaegar stood alone on the ramparts. Snowflakes wheeled like slow ash. He traced the dent in his breastplate, reflecting on years since the Trident. Prophecy betrayed, father slain, crown earned by blood's price. Peace had blossomed, yet beyond the wall deathless winter gathered. Beneath the city restless fire stirred, and within heart's ambition seeded new storms. Thunder growled across distant sea, though no cloud stirred. Rhaegar closed his eyes, listening. Wing beats. Drums? Perhaps merely his own heart. He resolved then. When spring returned, he would ride north himself, crown or no crown. The song of fire and ice demanded both verses, sung by one voice. Below, in quiet cells of the Red Keep, Melisandre knelt before scorching coals. Within their blaze she saw a raven bursting into flames, reborn as fiery phoenix, and a king standing beneath a bleeding star while the dead rose behind him like tidal dart. Her lips shaped prophecy. The princes promised ashes and snow. She smiled. So the board lay. Dragon King readying for cold war. Lioness nursing wildfire. Spider spinning silent. Rose Lord scenting frost. Sun snakes sharpening fangs. And beyond all sight, a tide of night surging south. In every village hearths burned lower, and eyes turned northward, wondering if the horizon held peace's sunrise or its funeral smoke. And in the quiet before dawn, the Balerion bell tolled thrice atop the Red Keep. The call for royal announcement. Courtiers scrambled, cloaks swirling. They gathered in the throne room, where the Iron Throne still loomed imprisoned beneath velvet chains, overshadowed now by a marble seat, carved like wings. There Rhaegar ascended, silver hair loose, circlet of plain gold, barely catching torchlight. Lyanna stood at his side, babe on hip, her winter rose braid aglow in brazier's shimmer. The king's voice rippled clear. Lords and ladies, sworn brothers and free sisters, hear me. Night gathers beyond our fields, yet morning follows night, not by wish, but by will. He lifted a parchment. This decree summons every house, great and humble, to send skilled hands north, builders, hunters, healers, smiths, for we will not cede a single hearth to fear. While I breathe, the realm stands united. Murmurs fluttered. Some faces paled at thought of braving snow. Others straightened with pride. Rhaegar's gaze took them all. In spring I ride to the wall, he declared. Not as a conqueror, nor savior, but as shield brother. Until dawn breaks, I ask each of you. Be dawn's ember. He raised his scarred palm. A hush pooled. In that hush, a spark glimmered within the scar. Faint as memory of ruby light reflecting river water. Some swore the glow lingered. Others blamed trick candles. Yet all felt a warmth tingle across the vast hall, as if invisible fires kindled where courage lay dormant. Outside, snow ceased. Clouds parted to reveal a single star streaking crimson across indigo sky, the comet reborn, trailing blood and promise. People flooded courts, pointing skyward. At the wall, horns sounded, one for rangers returning. Aegon peered from the gatehouse and saw shapes trudging from white. Barristan strode forth. The first man to cross the threshold fell to knees, frost-crusting beard, eyes human still. The dead, he gasped, march. Behind him, mountains of darkness shifted. East at sea, the Red Priestess unfurled sails of burning cloth and whispered. It begins? In the wreck of old Valyria, something stirred beneath slag heaps, sensing familiar heat flower in far-off air. In a cellar, under a ruined sept, a wildfire jar flared brighter than before, cracks spidering the green-like veins of malice. And in the Red Keep nursery, Jaehaerys Targaryen woke, violet eyes wide, and reached toward the window where the comet blazed. The carved dire wolf dropped from his grasp, clattering across rush-strewn floor. Instead, his tiny fingers closed round empty air, as if plucking a string only he could hear. Far away, a dragonbone harp thrummed one soft note in answer. Peace had not ended. It had merely shed its skin, revealing sinew of war beneath. Yet war born of unity differs from war born of rage. Under a bleeding star, ice and fire each flexed. Opposite, entwined, inevitable. And the song continued, measure after measure, slow, relentless, beautiful in its terrible climb toward dawn. A.K. Cold lingered over King's Landing long after the comet sank beneath the western horizon. Though spring buds should have broken across the godswood by mid-morning, their tips stayed hushed beneath a shell of rime, as if some ancient frost had whispered down from the wall and found new soil to clutch. Black ravens flitted nervous circles above the frost-whitened branches, scattering hoarse caws that shivered through the empty courtyards of Maegor's Holdfast. In the Queen's solar, the hearth raged day and night, yet the tapestries still quivered whenever the wind knifed along window slits. And Lyanna Stark, wolf among dragons, wrapped her babe tighter in a winter serpent quilt before pressing warm lips to his brow. Jaehaerys stirred at the kiss, violet eyes drifting open. They were eyes too old for 2 winters, pools that seemed to carry the ghost of dark rivers crossed before birth. Lyanna's own northern gray met that impossible lavender, and as often happened, she felt the child's calmness settle across her heart in soft invisible wings. The midwife hummed from the corner. Soft, aimless. A tune of no region. The Queen listened and found it oddly familiar. Something half-remembered from childhood hunts in the Wolfswood, when Snow still delighted rather than warned. Outside, the castle bell tolled once. A single note, low but commanding. It carried across the city, across slow barges nudging against the quays, across narrow alleys where small folk warmed hands over stuttering braziers, across the far-field camps where Tyrell outriders, Riverlander levies, and Arryn pikemen waited restless for banners to unfurl. The note summoned them all to the Mudgate, where the king's procession would depart for the march north. More than 2,000 souls, smiths, builders, revenkeepers, healers, would follow after, sworn to reinforce Eastwatch by the Sea. Lyanna laid her son in the cradle carved of weirwood and etched with a 3-headed direwolf spiraling up each leg. The midwife curtsied and took post by the rocker. Elia waited in the hall, wrapped in a cloak the color of dusk over Dorne. Rhaenys clung to her mother's hand, but Aegon stood a pace beyond, fitting last straps to half-greaves carried from the Dornish forges. At 12, the boy stood lean but straight, face not yet rid of childhood roundness, though his eyes had hardened this past year at the wall. Barristan's letters praised his courage against ice rot and raiding shadows. They also chronicled nightmares that came for him afterward, dreams where the wind wailed in a dead tongue. Rhaegar swept into the corridor then, silver hair unbound, black breastplate rehardened to absorb the dense memory, a heavy cloak of stark dun over mailed shoulders, as if he wore both halves of the realm in open declaration. At his hip hung 2 swords. The great Targaryen blade Blackfire, seldom worn since Maegor, and a pale Valyrian steel dagger he had named Brother's Bane on the day he forged the Kinslayer's peace. He kissed Lyanna quickly before kneeling to the cradle. "Grow fierce," he whispered to Jaehaerys, "but spare kindness for the weak." The babe cooed. A distant horn answered in odd harmony, rising from the city wall. Elia touched Rhaegar's sleeve. "Return whole." He clasped her hand and smiled, a flicker of warmth swift as candle flame in the gale. "Guard them all for me." Down they went through torchlit passages, joined by knights of the King's Guard. Jaime with lion helm tucked under his arm, Jonathor Derry's cloak darkened by crimson patches, Gerald Hightower come from Eastwatch at last. The bulwark of their order. At the stables, a silver destrier stamped in readiness, barded in scales dull with soot to conceal shine. Beside it, a rangy gray mare, pawed the straw ribs, scarred from wildling arrows, gifts of the Frost War. Rhaegar swung into the silver's saddle. Aegon mounted a smaller courser bearing a new shield-quartered direwolf dragon. On the ramparts Cersei waited, smile thin as a paper fan. She wore emerald silk, and at her throat, a chain of small jade links glinted too green in morning light. As the king's party rode beneath, she curtsied deep, though her eyes never touched Rhaegar. They lingered instead on Aegon's new sigil, on the braziers lining the cobbled yard, on the thin frost creeping into cracks where heat could not quite reach. The portcullis rattled up. Drums boomed once, twice, thrice, and the banners advanced. Lion and trout, sunspear and falcon, mandrake and greenhand. Last came the red and black of the dragon twined with the running wolf of Winterfell. Small folk knelt in the gutters, some in prayer, some to cup warm breath against chapped skin, some to stare in broken wonder at the king who had slain his own father to save them, and now rode north to confront dead myths. Bells chimed again over the bay, gulls rising in startled swirls. High upon the western curtain wall, Varys lowered his padded hood and released a thin sigh. So many pieces rolling at once, he murmured. The chill wind tugged the lavender silk of his sleeves. If the board tilts a hair, they will crash together and shatter. Beside him stood Tywin Lannister in undyed wool, trimmed modestly for winter grief, his hands clasped behind his back. The older lord watched his daughter below. Boards do not tilt themselves, Lord Varys. The spider smiled. Just so. But pieces with ambitions may chew through the wood. Tywin's pale eyes narrowed a fraction. Keep your spiders out of my daughter's chamber. My own counsel will suffice. Ace, you say? Varys bowed, holding the curve longer than courtesy demanded. When he rose, his face wore polite emptiness once more. The hand commands until the king returns. Will your lions obey us, Stark? Tywin glanced across rooftops toward the Tower of the Hand. Vengeance Stark's banner, gray direwolf stitched with black, fluttered limp. They will obey me, Tywin said at last. 7 days out, the host reached the ruins of the village Maiden's Ford at dusk. Snow clouds bruised the horizon like a siege wall of smoke. They set pickets at the fallen sept, posted torches along the frozen river. Night tightened its grip early, smothering the last sickly daylight before supper. Inside the makeshift command tent Barristan, Gollum, over a barrel table. At the map's corner Maester Conwy flicked a finger across fresh quillwork. Then raiders reported here. Ice-rot cases spiking along this glacial ridge, supply caches established here and here. Rhaegar traced routes with gauntleted hand, while Ranulf Tarly coughed hard into a kerchief. "Any now way. We can reinforce Eastwatch," the Reach Lord rasped. "But holdfasts west of the Shadow Tower will rot out before moon's turn, unless the sickness breaks." Benjen Stark, pale from the ride south, then half-healed, swallowed brandy. "Break?" He shook his head. "It is no flux, my lords. Flesh freezes even under furs." My ranger claimed he watched a fellow's tears turn to black crystals before they struck ground. The whites travel in thin lines, scouts perhaps. Whatever commands them still gathers power. A rumble passed outside. Thunder, or something heavier. Tents quaked. Prince Aegon, standing near the flap, felt his pulse jump. The sound came again, deeper now, like distant gates of the world slamming shut. Barristan's eyes went to the king. "Your Grace, perhaps you should remain at Moat Cailin while we push to the wall." Rhaegar's mouth set. "I will not lead from behind." No more argument followed. Plans drawn, they took rest where they could. On cloaks, beside low fires, under dented shields. Barristan dozed in meditation, one gloved hand wrapped round a pommel. Aegon beneath twin firs dreamed of wolves tearing icy statues until the statues bled black smoke. Rhaegar lay awake, watching emberflies trace aimless flight in the brazier, and listened to the wind outside the canvas. In the hiss he heard an echo of father's final breath, then Lyanna's soft laughter. then harp strings plucked by unseen fingers. He slipped into half-sleep and saw the comet again, streaking above a battlefield where armored corpses turned to snow-dusted statues as they fell. Dawn clawed its way over low hills, a fragile gray smeared by swirling flakes. Scouts returned bearing grim tidings. The river ahead steamed though ice crusted its banks, crows perched in brittle trees falling dead without wound. One ranger produced a gauntlet frozen near solid, its interior lined with rime, though strapped to his heat-swollen hand. They burned it on the spot. The march resumed. Step by step, mile by mile, the old King's Road vanished beneath unrelenting snow. At Queen's Crown they found cottages empty, doors barred from within by frost thicker than oak. At Long Lake's shore they glimpsed shapes shuffling across whitecaps, tall and thin as drowned masts. But when Egan raised spyglass, the shapes dissolved into blowing drifts. 3 days north of the last river, it began. The sun vanished at noon, one blink between clearing gray and utter blankness. Wind crashed upon them like a living wall. Horses screamed, ranks scattered. The vanguard vanished from sight in a sheath of stinging ice crystals whirling sideways. Trumpets blared signals none could see. Rhaegar, cloak flapping in chaotic snaps, forced the silver onto a rise of rock. Snow slashed horizontal lines across his cheeks, sharp enough to bleed. Calling commands felt pointless. His own words vanished 6 inches from his mouth. Somewhere behind him, Aegon hacked for breath. Barristan's armor clanging as he closed ranks about the prince. A deep groan rolled across the blizzard. Nothing earthly. It resonated through every rib, trembling the ground. Rhaegar saw torches gutter like candle stubs. Their flames sucked into blackness. Then shapes appeared. First a single silhouette, then dozens, then a line stretching left to right across the field. Figures of ragged ice, gaunt limbs glistening, eyes burning azure. At their fore rode a taller nightmare astride a dead horse plated in hoarfrost. It lifted a lance of frozen mist. "Draw," Barristan bellowed, voice anointed by lifetime command. Blades hissed out, Valyrian, steel, dragon-glassed. Silence answered. The spectral host watched, wind still screaming around them, but somehow quiet between shapes and men. Rhaegar dismounted, black fire heavy in fist, darker than night beneath swirling white. He drew breath to speak, but found no words. The others advanced in slow unison. Suddenly, the ground before them burst upward, snow thrown high by unseen weight. A booming roar shook the air, and from beneath rose one the giant, swinging a tree trunk wreathed in burning pitch. Aegon had given him torch privileges. The giant had taken to carrying logs aflame. Now he bellowed and charged, scattering whites like painted dolls. Dragon-glass arrows hissed from the high ground, rangers previously blind now using giant's torchlight to aim. Ice creatures shattered, fleshless joints exploding into dust when struck. But the White Walker, the lance-bearer, glided forward untouched. His horse kicked snow aside with skeletal hooves. Wun pivoted to face it. The lance swept once, severing the flaming trunk. Sparks showered, fizzling against the rider's armor. The giant reeled, stunned, and the host of whites flowed around the king's men toward exposed baggage wagons. Rhaegar raised Blackfire high. In its black reflection, he saw the sapphire eyes approach. He met them head-on. Steel clanged like iron bars snapping. Cold surged up the blade, but Brother's Bane in Rhaegar's left hand, drawn now, flashed pale, meeting the icy spear. Barristan joined on the right, Sir Gerald on the left, all clashing in brutal circle about the tall walker. Aegon darted through thrashing legs of chargers, shield high against flying shards. With dragonbone bow, he loosed obsidian shafts into the whites pressing the rear. 2 crumpled, twisting smoke. Others stumbled but crawled on broken limbs. Atop the ridge, Jonathor Derry's voice rang. Flame pots. Barrels of oil and pitch rolled downhill, shattering among dead ranks. 1 spark sufficed. Fire roared blue-green, scorching snow to steam. Screams erupted. Human? Inhuman? Both. Still the White Walker fought. He moved like water in freezing air, spear-cutting barrages of impossible arcs. Barristan's helm split, silver hair darkening with blood. Gerald's gauntlet froze solid, skin binding to iron. He howled, dropping sword. The walker aimed to finish him, but Rhaegar stepped into the path, cross-cutting blackfire against the spear's haft. Valyrian steel bit. Half the frost shaft fell, steaming. The walker tilted its crowned head as though intrigued. Rhaegar sensed not malice, but alien fascination, the curiosity of some stark element studying a flicker of warmth. Blackfire came round again. This time the walker's mail cracked. A sound like splitting glaciers echoed. Blue shards dusted the wind. Yet still, it stood. Lightning stitched the sky. Unnatural, horizontal. A thunderclap followed. The walker's mount reared, sinew creaking like dry rope, and both rider and horse exploded into brittle fragments under the second strike of lightning. Not lightning, Rhaegar realized in stunned breath. Dragonfire, a column of incandescent gold and red cleaving the tempest. From the clouds above dove a dragon. Black as night, save where its underbelly shimmered molten ruby. Wings spanned half the field, trailing comets of cinders. On its neck clung a lone rider. Slender, robed crimson, Melisandre. The dragon leveled, jaw opening, belching a stream of fire that burned not orange but fierce white. Hotter than forge heart. Whites ignited in waves. Ice melted to water. Water to hanging steam that filled air with opaque curtains. Through the veils Rhaegar thought he saw another shape. Small dragon whelp maybe. Flitting above the first, but steam warped sight. The host broke. What remained scuttled away into howling dark. Giant and knights fell back, panting clouds. The wind eased, as if some vast breath exhaled its fury and retreated. Snow drifted slow now, settling on scorched armor and blackened bones. Melisandre circled once, then alighted near the shattered ridge. The dragon folded wings, its hide still crackled with residual glow. She slid down, crimson robes unsoiled, ember eyes fixed upon Rhaegar. "The cold god tests our flames," she said softly. "But he will not quench them, not while Azor Ahai draws breath." Rhaegar sheathed Brother's Bane and looked upon her mount. "Where did this creature hatch?" "In ashes thousands of leagues away," she answered. "He is called Melis Reborn." Melis, Rhaegar thought. Viserys' child queen namesake dragon, lost long before Dance of Dragons. How could a red woman hatch such memory? He studied her face. Whatever he sought lay hidden beneath a calm hotter than passion. Wun lumbered forward, dragging wounded leg. Rhaegar laid a hand upon the giant's arm in thanks. The giant rumbled a tired note, perhaps of gratitude. Barristan pressed cloth to his scalp. "We must burn the dead." And so they did, until dawn bled rose across ragged clouds. Pits smoldered for hours. Stench of roasting white filling nostrils, until no one could taste anything but char. Casualty count fell lighter than feared. 39 men slain outright, 5 more frozen beyond remedy. Giant wounded, no horses spared. Yet each veteran sensed a truth. The battle meant little save as portent. Scouts tracked white prints away from field. Straight north, converging at a single point beyond vision, like rivers feeding some dark sea. In King's Landing, dawn reached ramparts late through thick sea fog. Cersei stood on the old sept steps, staring east where reddish smudge still clung to clouds from distant wildfire tests. Within the crypt underfoot, her exiled pyromancers had perfected smaller, more stable phials they called dragon seeds. Each contained enough volatile green to engulf a courtyard, yet small enough to hide under a cloak. She carried 2 at her belt, disguised as jade perfume gourds. Her plan had matured beyond petty explosions. If the king fell in the north, slain by others or buried in avalanche, the realm would want quick, decisive rule. The Hand, Benjen, could not hold south loyalty. His own bannermen would recall him to Winterfell. Tywin would step forward. Yet Tywin favored diplomacy and coin to seize. Cersei wanted awe. She would unveil dragon seeds before the throne, ignite them outside the walls to mimic magic returned. The people would see her as blaze-born savior, worthy queen regent. Viserys, malleable boy, would be her puppet husband and eventual king. Fire and lion fed each other nicely. Whispers of Melisandre's dragon threatened that timeline. But Cersei believed spectacle more valuable here than there. She walked the harbor, letting gulls wheel overhead, rehearsing words for the city's guilds. Sparks danced in her darkening thoughts. Meanwhile, Robert Baratheon hunted snow bears north of Winterfell. The greatsword he swung no longer belonged to a drunkard's boast. Sober seasons had reclaimed the warrior's sinew. He wore thick furs stitched with amber studs, crownless yet commanding. Beside him strode young Robb Stark and Margaery Tyrell's cousin Willis, envoys representing alliance of North and Reach. Rumors of the White Walker attack raced south on raven wings. Here, Robert sought to stiffen hearts. He knew Rhaegar fought like a hero. Couriers told of dual blades flashing in snow, and old twinges of rivalry rose. But he quenched them. He owed that man his sister's happiness. So Robert hunted, taught the boys to strike high and duck claws, and at night shared tales around the mead barrel that laughter still cut winter fear. One evening, Robb asked if Robert missed being king. Robert stared into the fire, beer untouched, and answered in a voice low with revelation. "Only when I forget what it cost." He drank then, but slow. Far south at Sunspear, Nymeria sand watched sails bloom crimson on the Jade Sea horizon. Red priestess ships bearing news of dragons, doubtless. Doran Martell, swaddled in silks against gout, listened to her report and smiled thinly. Fire consumes our enemies and asks no coin until the feast is done. He ordered emissaries to King's Landing, bearing mirrored daggers forged of Dornish glass, gifts to remind the court of alliances sharp and bright. He also ordered spies find the poisons once whispered to melt ice faster than fire. Dorne would have tools for every season. The march resumed. It took 4 more days to reach the wall. 4 days of shattered quiet under skies, roiling unnatural jade and pearl. Melis flew ahead, scouting. Aegon rode often near one, who in turn carried barrels of pitch like toy drums. Benjen guided the column to Castle Black, where Lord Commander Corgiel met them gaunt and coughing into a black scarf. "Eastwatch stands barely," he croaked. "Shadow Tower half empty. We hold with half rations." Rhaegar dismounted. "Where's the cry of the horns?" "Silent," Corgiel said. "They broke 2 days past." Spookiest sound I ever heard. Wind snapped them like brittle sticks. The king paced ramparts. From atop the wall he saw beyond into milky vapors cloaking the haunted forest. Shapes moved beneath. Small, quick, purposeful. How many wildlings remain north? "Unknown," Benjen said. "Most who wished safe haven have surrendered. The rest serve darker masters or flee them." Rhaegar leaned on ice-crusted stone, eyes narrowing. "We cannot fight what we cannot see." He looked to Melisandre. "Send the dragon." She bowed once, confidence absolute. Melis rose with thunder of wings, climbing into leaden sky. Below, men scurried to stations. Builders hammered wedge after wedge of dragon glass into arrowheads. Blacksmith smoke curled into unforgiving cold. Barristan drilled recruits in shield walls, the dragon banner aligning beside the direwolf in disciplined ranks. Night fell purple. They waited. Snowflakes seized torchlight, twisting it into shifting specters. Then from forest's fringe came wailing. Thin at first, then a multitude of creaking shrieks. Horn blasts from the wall answered, 3 long notes. The dead, the dead, the dead. They emerged crawling up the slope like a tide of broken dolls. Dead men and women, children, animals. All fused to ice, eyes glowing. No silent march now. They scrabbled and clawed, mouths opening on voiceless hunger. Above them soared the White Walkers, astride skeletal elk and bears, long spears leveled forward. At their center towered a figure thrice the height of a man, crowned in cracked glacier, cloak billowing black frost, riding no living creature but drifting on an unseen platform of swirling blizzard. The Night King. Rhaegar's breath plumed. He raised Blackfire, its edge catching torch gleam. "Loose," he commanded. Arrows screamed, obsidian shards peppering the slope, striking whites into bursts of ash. Catapults flung clay pots of wildfire, which burst in neon desperation. Green flames scouring snow to slush, sending up hisses like steam dragons. Yet the Night King advanced slow, extending one long hand. Snow whirled upward, extinguishing flame. Green turned to sick turquoise, glass splintering midair. Where fire had tried to live, now frost gripped. Melees plummeted from cloud, flame gouting. White-hot stream clashed with the blue shield rising from the Night King's gesture. Explosion of steam rocked the wall, ice cracking beneath their feet. Melees banked, shrieking in pain, frost crusting wingtips. Melisandre clung to spikes along the dragon's neck. She called down in High Valyrian, voice a rolling prayer, and Melees turned again. This time the flame came silver hotter, and it pierced the shield. The Night King recoiled, cloak unraveling into shards. Rhaegar seized the moment. "Open the gate!" War horns signaled. Massive chains rattled, elevator groaned, lowering the king. Barristan, Jaime, Bungeon, Aegon, and 50 picked knights to ground level. Upon snow they formed a wedge, one carrying 2 tree trunk clubs tipped with iron. They charged into the onrushing whites, hacking a corridor. Obsidian blades shattered bone. Brother's Bane glimmered pale fire as it severed limbs that did not bleed. The Night King loomed nearer. He raised one finger. Ice sheets surged from earth, blocking path. One smashed one aside. Aegon slid beneath another, cutting knee at undead hound. Barristan dueled an armored walker whose sword seemed forged of moonlight. Jaime's lion helm frosted, but he fought on, golden hair turning white with rime. Finally, Rhaegar stood before the Night King. They regarded each other through swirling snow. Memories flickered. The Trident's red water, green wildfire jars, the cry of newborn Jaehaerys. The Night King extended his hand in invitation. Not peace, but challenge. Rhaegar reversed grip on Brother's Bane. It and Blackfire together hummed in unnatural harmony. He stepped forward. The walker's palm opened wide. A blade of black ice formed, dripping shards. They met. Steel against silence, obsidian against eternity. Echoes rang down centuries. Dreams clashed. Above, Melees shrieked. He grappled in midair with another dragon, pale as old bone, eyes blue. Viserion reborn in death. The two spiraled round the wall's peak, talons gouging stone. Dragonfire met dragonfrost, the sky a maelstrom of sizzling cloud. On the ground, Rhaegar's left pauldrons froze solid, cracking. His right gauntlet steamed where blade met black ice. Aegon, seeing his father falter, rushed. The Night King flicked a finger. An ice spear gutted the boy's shield, hurling him back. Barristan howled and lunged, but 3 walkers intercepted. Time slowed. Lyanna's laughter filled Rhaegar's head again. Warm, defiant. Alive. Jaehaerys reaching for the comet. He felt those wings inside his chest fill with light. And for one heartbeat, every ruby lost at the Trident flashed along Blackfire's fuller, bright red stars blooming. He drove forward. Blackfire cracked the ice blade. Brother's Bane plunged into the Night King's chest. For an instant, nothing moved. Then a ripple rushed outward. Blue light shattering. Snow reversed into vapor. The Night King stared into Rhaegar's eyes. Behind the sapphire pupils, Rhaegar saw not malice, but an ancient exhaustion, as though the creature merely longed for rest denied. The walker shattered. No scream. Only the sigh of wind freed from old prison. Shards spiraled skyward, glinting, then dissipated into flakes. Across the field every white froze mid-motion. They tilted their heads, listening, then collapsed, lifeless again. Walkers fighting Barristan fractured like river ice in thaw. Above, the ice dragon jerked, confused. Melees seized throat in fire-wreathed jaws, ripping. Blue fire sputtered, subsided. The corpse dragon fell in silent arcs into the forest beyond. Melis landed, wings trembling. Silence ate the world. Snow still drifted, but lightly now. Lazy flakes, uninspired. Torches flickered normal orange. Men staggered into open, weapons slack. Wun roared, triumph and grief mingled. Aegon rose, bleeding from shoulder, but smiling wild as first day of sun. He started toward his father. Rhaegar swayed. Frost blossomed along collarbone. The Night King's ice blade, though shattered, had scored ribs, and something black snaked there. Ice rot, swift and deadly. Barristan lunged to catch him. Aegon shouted. Melisandre appeared, robes billowing. "Lord of Light, preserve your champion," she intoned. She pressed flaming hands to wound. Steam hissed. Flesh seared. Rhaegar's eyes rolled white. For one moment Barristan thought he saw flames dance beneath King's skin, chasing frost. When smoke cleared, the wound closed. Scar of black glass shot through with red cinders. Rhaegar gasped. Alive. He stood on wavering legs. "Is it done?" "For now," Melisandre said. "But shadows flee only while fires burn." They burned what whites remained, piled broken weapons. Meli circled overhead, then perched on a ridge south of the wall. The beast's body steamed where frost had kissed but not conquered. Word flew south faster than ravens, carried in dreams, in hearts, in rippling wind that smelled of ashes and snow. King Rhaegar Targaryen Stark, Dragon Wolf, had slain the Night King beneath cold skies. He would return. But what returns from darkness is never the same. In the Red Keep, Cersei sat before her wildfire jars and trembled, an emotion new and unwelcome. She hurled one jar. It shattered empty. Fear dissolved to rage. She would show this Dragon King that South need caution too. Plans accelerated. Varys learned of her stores through small bird chatter and hurried to Tywin. Words clashed behind closed doors. The Hand ordered Cersei escorted to Casterly Rock for a rest. She refused. At dusk she vanished with a retinue of half-loyal gold cloaks. By morning the Lion Tower's lower vault exploded in green belch, rocking the city awake. It slew 20 guards but did little structural harm. An experiment, whispered Varys, successful enough. Tywin's jaw set in iron. The city panicked. Benjen rallied watch. Elia shielded children. Through the chaos strode Jaehaerys toddling after nurse, reaching at smoke with fascination rather than fear. As though flames sang lullabies, Rhaegar's host limped south. They left half their strength to man the wall, reinforcing towers. Whites stirred no more. But something else churned beyond the forest. Wind as old as creation, searching for new king to crown. Yet hope replaced despair. Nights sharpened, but did not bite so viciously. Fires burned without blue shift. At Queen's Crown, delegations greeted them. Robert Baratheon, Marguerite Tyrell, Willis and Robb, rows of archers saluting. Robert gripped Rhaegar in soldier's embrace. "You look like hell," he said, tears in eyes. "And you smell of bear," Rhaegar joked hoarsely. They laughed. Bonds sealed stronger than banners. When at last King's Landing's walls loomed, smoke still hung over Lion Tower ruins. Rhaegar rode beneath defaced stonework. Citizens flooded streets to cheer, wave torches, cry thanks. Yet within many eyes burned flickers of new fear. If kings wrestle ice gods and queens toy with wildfire, what becomes of small folk? Lyanna awaited on the gatehouse. When Rhaegar climbed stairs, she fell into his arms without word. Jaehaerys cooed, one pudgy hand touching the black glass scar through torn surcoat. The scar glowed faint red beneath. Lyanna saw and did not flinch. She kissed it. That night in council, Barristan placed before the throne a chest of cracked ice. Inside lay the Night King's broken crown, jagged shards fused to obsidian dagger fragments. "He is undone," the old knight said, "but his memory may yet rally frost." Rhaegar ordered the shards forged into pommels for swords of his 3 children, to remind them the cost of dusk. News of Cersei's flight arrived. Tywin spoke little. He requested leave to hunt his rogue daughter. The king granted it with sorrow. No one suspected yet how many dragon seeds she carried. Deep in the cells where wildfire had once slept, now only torches flickered gold. Green plague gone to unknown roads. Rhaegar personally quenched each corridor, sealing doors iron-bound. For some evils, fire alone was no cure. For those, memory must suffice. Winter's back broke. On the first day of true thaw, buds cracked open in the godswood, petals trembling under sunlight. A soft rain fell, not snow, not ash, but clean renewal. Children splashed in puddles while hawkers sold hot oatcakes sweetened with honey grown in arbor hives newly thawed. On that same morning, 3 dragon eggs at Dragonstone ruptured with echoes like distant thunder. From shattered shells crawled hatchlings, one smoky gray, one deep green, one a pale gold flecked with jade. The castle maester, trembling, sent Raven at once. Dragons reborn have cracked night's shell. Rhaegar held the letter while sun warmed his face. He pictured his infant son gripping air, pulling unseen strings. He pictured Meleys wheeling across dawn. He pictured ice shattering beneath fire. Some songs never end. They simply change key. The king turned to Lyanna, to Elia, to Aegon brimming with tales, to Rhaenys plucking harp chords reminiscent of crickets, to Benjen drafting reforms for a night's watch that now served living and dead alike, to Varys winding new webs built of trust rather than fear. For the spider had seen dawn dance on sword edges and found it beautiful. Rhaegar whispered to no one and everyone, "Now we begin." Beyond the sea, in the smoking ruins of Valyria, a pulse of old magic answered, each beat echoing like a forge hammer shaping future steel. Ships unfurled. Wheels turned. Cersei's wildfire plots crept west. Dorne shamed beneath heat. The Reach rearmed. Braavos counted debts. And on the edge of the world, wind whistled over graves newly stilled. The realm breathed, scarred and shining. Shadows stretched, but so did light. And somewhere in the quiet between heartbeat and harpstring, prophecy's melody wove onward, 50,000 notes stronger, toward the next inevitability, toward peace earned not by stillness, but by the ceaseless balancing act of dragon and wolf, rose and lion, fire and ice, ever entwined in endless dance beneath a sky both bleeding and blue.